In the interview, they are going to ask any question which is related to Indian economy, performance, fine. Then you are able to answer in the better manner, fine. For example, right now interview is going on, and in the interview they are asking one question. Do you think that the performance of Indian economy, do you think that the performance of Indian economy is satisfactory in comparison to global headwinds? So there is one person in the board who is proper economist, fine, and he is using such a technical term. Do you think that? So now you should know about what Indian economy is performing. Then you should know how other economies are performing, fine, and what is the meaning of headwinds. So if you are able to decode these three terms, then you are able to answer this question, fine. So economic survey and budget, they are very important for that particular year's exam, whether it is prelims or mains or interview. Budget, generally two things: announcements by the government regarding schemes and different sectors, and outlays, how much money government is going to spend at where. Whereas economic survey is going to explain what is Indian economy right now, past 2-3 years, how they are performing. So they compare the data. For example, if you see this year's economic survey, they have used the data from 2021 onwards. 2021 onwards, they have used the data. 2021-22 financial year onwards, they are using the data. So if you will see any year's economic survey, they generally use 3 to 4 year data in order to explain how economy is performing, fine. And while explaining those things or writing those things, they use many of the key terminologies, okay. They use a lot of key terminologies, and these key terminologies are also asked in the exam in the different way. Sometimes they will make direct question on it. Sometimes rather than making a question, these terminologies are used as a statement. Okay, so this is why what I thought that ki budget and economic survey, we will discuss, analyze, but those terminologies which are used in the economic survey and budget, we will discuss in the class, and we will also do the questions on it. Primarily means first we will discuss chapter wise, okay, chapter wise discussion of economic survey, and in that chapter each and every section will be taken, and in every section what terminology they have used, what analysis they have done, and on the basis what kind of the question can be formed. This is the way how we are going to do, fine. Then once the chapter is completed, I will give you 3 questions on the basis of that chapter. That question may be asked in what? Mains examination, fine. So this is how we are going to do economic survey. Same approach we will follow in what? Budget, okay. But generally they do not ask direct question from the budget. According to the budget financial year 2025-2026, such kind of the probability of a question is never there, but they indirectly ask the question. For example, if you'll see in this year, government has mentioned Udan scheme. So Udan scheme was in the news. It was in the news, fine. If you will see the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Civil Aviation, so they are keep working on it, and those things are published in the newspapers. But aspirants have thought that the aviation sector generally they will not focus. They will focus on what? Other infrastructure like railway, shipping, transportation, other means of transportation. They will not focus. But they have asked, and now you can see that how government is determined for the Udan scheme. Finance Minister have specifically mentioned, and they are saying that they are developing what? 100 airports. And why these things? If you will go back 2 years back, you will find that Air India and Indigo both have put the order of more than 500 planes. Fine, biggest order in the history of aviation. both airlines from India. So it shows that the aviation sector is booming in India. So government support is required. Fine. So these are the things which you will understand retrospectively and prospectively, what we are going to discuss in this. Fine. Now, if you'll see the economic survey, fine. So the system of presentation of economic survey was started during financial year 1951. Means 1950-51 financial year, they have started this practice of presenting what? Economic survey. But at that point of time, economic survey was presented along with what? Budget. So it is presented along with the budget. But later on, in 1964, they have changed this practice, and from 1964 onwards, this economic survey is presented 1 day in advance. Fine. It is presented 1 day in advance. And like we do follow the parliamentary system of government. So here ministers are responsible. Fine. But opting some other systems like presidential system, so country like India also opted certain post. For example, Chief Economic Advisor. Fine. Chief Economic Advisor. So this Chief Economic Advisor position is there, and this Chief Economic Advisor work very closely with Prime Minister's office plus Ministry of Finance, better called FinMin. Fine. And this Chief Economic Advisor, he worked with the Ministry of Finance, and through him, this survey is being prepared. So Mr. Nageshwaran is the Chief Economic Advisor. So economic survey is prepared by whom? Chief Economic Advisor. So it is prepared by Chief Economic Advisor. Even if you will see the survey, fine, see the survey, so you will find his name mentioned there. Fine. So the ministry involved in the making of this what? Ministry involved in the making of this survey, but rather than role of minister, it is role played by whom? Economic Advisor. Fine. Economic Advisor who is not answerable to the parliament. He is not answerable to the parliament, but he prepares, and this is presented in the parliament by whom? Finance Minister. So maybe he is not directly answerable to the parliament, but because this economic survey is presented by whom? It is presented by a finance minister, and that is why government have to answer if the question is being asked. Fine. So economic survey, and after economic survey, what will happen? Then the next day budget will be presented. And these happen in which session? Budget session, and the first session of a year. Fine. So budget session is the first session of that year. Okay. And what happens when the session of first session of year starts? It starts with what? Joint address of President. So President will be the jointly address the Parliament, and he is going to explain the priorities of his government. His speech is prepared by whom? His speech or her speech is prepared by the government. And once her speech is over, then economic survey, budget, and discussion on what? Discussion on President's speech, and then discussion on what? Budget. Fine. And this budget discussion is going to be completed. This budget discussion is going to be completed before ending of financial year. Fine. So in this session, this is a very important session from the point of view of what? From the point of view of government. Okay. Because government is going to present all of its expectations and reality, what they are going to do and how they are going to do in the financial year. Now, if you see this year's survey, okay, so this year's survey is divided into 13 chapters. Before 2017, there was a practice of presenting the survey into two parts, part A and part B. But then they stopped this practice of part A and part B, means they present in two volumes, part A, that is volume 1 and volume 2. Now they are presenting the survey in one volume and somewhere around 13 to 14 chapter. Okay, many of the aspirants told me that somebody suggested them to read the survey of at least 3 years. I said, beta, just read 1 year, that is sufficient for you. Even it is almost going to be impossible for you to read the survey. How many pages? 442. 442 pages of 1 year multiplied by 3. How much? More than enough for you. Right? So, survey of 3 years is not required. Why? I have a logic for this. You should read that year's survey if you have a time. Fine. If you have a time, condition applied. If you have a time, then read that year's survey. And focusing on data and facts, more focus on what analysis they have given. That will enhance your understanding. Focus on the terminology they have used. Again, that will enhance your understanding. But if you will be trapped in the data and facts, every page have at least 10 to 15 data and facts. Charts and diagrams is also there. So if you will focus on that, then it will be very difficult for you. But if you will eliminate those data, facts, too much things, then it will be somewhere around 150 to 170 pages, which you can read. Okay. And it is more useful. Fine. If you already have a knowledge of subject, then it is more useful. But if you do not have a knowledge of the subject, basic understanding, then you should keep certain book or material along with yourself in order to understand. Fine. Now, if you will see a survey of every year. So every year survey, chapter number 1 starts with state of economy. Okay. It starts with state of economy. And this state of economy is basically divided into 3 parts. Okay. State of economy at global level. Fine. Then at union level, and then at state government level. Fine. So this global level means what is happening in the economy around the world. Fine. And you know that what is happening right now everywhere. Who is in the news? Donald Trump is in the news. Mr. Donald is in the news. Fine. Not Uncle Donald. Donald Trump is in the news. Fine. So Donald Trump is in the news. Why? Because he's putting the tariff, creating a panic, and then he's saying that, hold on. What is doing? Putting the tariff, creating a panic, hold on. Market is going to down, up, and again down. Fine. So this one thing is happening. Russia-Ukraine war is still not over. Fine. Though there is a truce between Hamas and Israel. But for how long? Because they have a history. To sign a peace, then one party is going to what? Put something, and then again short-term war, then again peace, war and peace. So this is about to happen again and again. And because that is most volatile region of the world, and that region is also rich of what? Mineral resources, especially what? Oil. So that is why any problem in that region is going to severely impact economy. Fine. World has not completely come out of COVID related problem. Why? COVID is over, but COVID has created a supply chain disruption. So this supply chain disruption is still not over. Fine. It is still not over. And the impact of supply chain crisis. Fine. Impact of supply chain crisis is creating a lot of problem everywhere. And during COVID, what happened? Economic activities went down. And in order to rebound the economy, most of the countries, they have given what? They have given monetary stimulus. Government, see, because of COVID, lockdown happened. And lockdown created what? Demand decreased. And in order to pump the demand, government through central banks started putting money in the economy. So this money supply is being increased in order to what? In order to make economy recover. In order to boost the demand. Money supply will be increased, and increased money supply will boost what? Demand. It will boost demand. Demand will trigger what? Supply. This is what people thought that. What they thought that, okay, what is happening? COVID, lockdown. So when lockdown will open, people are facing demand related issues. What we will do? We will increase the supply of money. Money will trigger what? Demand. And demand will trigger what? Supply. So money triggered the demand. Money triggered the demand. But there is a supply chain disruption. And why supply chain disruption? Supply chain disruption mainly attributed to whom? China. Because China is what's global manufacturing hub. Fine. So China went for strict COVID related norms. So supply chain in the China was initiated little bit later. And because of globalization, even China is a manufacturing hub. But China is also taking something from nearby regions. And if any component or any part is unavailable, then main manufacturing line will not work. Fine. So China is getting raw material from some country. Fine. So after getting the raw material, they are doing the production. So imagine if there is an issue in the raw material side, then China will not produce. Suppose there is no issue at the raw material side, but where is the issue? At the China there is an issue. Now suppose China have no issues, but once the product is manufactured at China, it need to be moved to the Europe or their destination by flying? No, by sailing through the sea lanes. And that need what? Containers and ships. But because of the huge backlog, container and ships are there. Means one container start moving from India towards where? China. So they will get an entry in the Chinese port after 3 months. It start today, it will reach to China in next 10 days. But it will get an entry in the port after 3 months. So this is what happened immediately after the COVID. And this is the whole picture of supply chain disruption. So supply chain disruption doesn't only mean that it is happening only because China is not producing. China starts production. But because of the shipping constraints, fine, logistic constraints are also happening. So see what happened. Demand is increased, but supply is not able to increase. Then what came? High inflation. Fine, high inflation starts rising in subcontinent like India, Europe and US. Fine. So this high inflation has created a pressure on the government as well as central bank to tame down what? Inflation. Now, if you want to tame the inflation, that means you have to decrease what? Money supply. If you will decrease the money supply, what will decrease? Demand will decrease and GDP will also shrink. So now you have to fight at two ends. Every country has to fight at two ends. One, try to pace what? GDP. But at the same time, you have to try to control what? Inflation. Fine. So this is a problem what entire world is facing. Fine, entire world is facing. But there are certain countries who are key factor here. Fine. Two key factors here. One is US and other is what? China. Donald Trump versus Xi Jinping. Fine. So US, why US? Because USA currency, US dollar, and it is a dominant currency of the world. Almost 79% of world trade is happening in which currency? Dollar. Fine. So any change in the USA's economy, availability of dollar, it is going to severely impact what? Entire world economy. And US is one of the world's largest consumer country. Fine. One of the world's largest consumer country. So they consume a lot. And China produce a lot. Fine. So their currency is a dominant currency. Plus they are also a center of global demand. Especially when we talk about what? Services. Fine. Whereas China is a hub of what? Manufacturing. They are a hub of what? Manufacturing. So these two economies are key. If you see in the context of India, fine, Chinese economy is not visibly impacting Indian economy too much. If you will read the newspaper, magazines and all, you will not find too much impact of Chinese economy on Indian economy. But you will find lot of articles are written in comparison to what? US economy and Indian economy. Impact of US economy on what? Indian economy. But I have a question for you. What do you think? Who is the largest trading partner of India? China. India's largest export goes to which country? US. And top three countries. Export. India's export. Export by quantity. See the data and you will find the country which? China. Though there is a huge gap between what? Export and import to China. But China is still a very important destination for what? India's export. And whenever there is a talk between India and China regarding the trade imbalance is an issue. India and China trade reaching to $200 billion. Fine. But out of that $200 billion, more than $100 billion is imported by whom? India. And somewhere around $60 to $70 billion is exported by India to whom? China. But still that $60-70 billion is a huge amount for a country like whom? India. So Chinese economy also impact. And whatever we are manufacturing here, for example, yesterday I was reading one article regarding solar industry in India. So the solar energy is a key for clean energy, but all solar industry in India is dependent only on whom? China for the raw material supply. So even if you want to export, fine, even if you want to export from India to any other country, but if there is a supply chain disruption at China, your exports is going to be what? Get impacted. So what I mean to say here is, if there is any issue in the Chinese economy, India's export is also going to be get impacted. Fine. Because still, for example, iPhone manufacturing came to where? India. But still lot of things are still coming from where? China. Okay. So in this context, China is an important country. And what happened? If you see in the recent time, Chinese economy starts slowing down. The demand is not rising there. And their sectors like real estate sector, they are facing huge problem. But because China is a communist country, press freedom is not there, so only filtered news is coming. Whereas if such kind of crisis in the European countries and US, you will find detailed news and analysis. But Chinese are putting what? Restrictions on the media. So only limited information are coming. And 3 months back, Chinese central bank have announced a big stimulus to revive what? Economy. Fine. So Chinese economy is also facing a slowdown in their economy. Still their supply chain is not fully functional as it was before COVID. Okay. So this is China's story. We are talking about this section. Global level. So first China. So what is China facing? China is facing issue number 1. They have not able to restore their supply chain as it was before COVID. Chinese economy is slowing down, consumption is decreasing, and that is why China want to ignite their economy. So this is what happening in China. Now let's go to the Europe. In Europe, as per economic survey, there are 2 type of trends in the European economy. Basically, economy, agriculture, industries, and services sector. Fine. But when we talk about global economy, okay, most of the discussion is happening at what level? Industries and services. Why? Why not agriculture is so prominent? Why agriculture is not so prominent? Huh? Why? Agriculture is a most vulnerable sector, industries or services. Which sector of a country is most vulnerable? Agriculture. So every country will try to protect which sector most? Agriculture. So every country deploy lot of protectionist measures in order to save their what? Agriculture sector. And this is why WTO is still struggling to make more trade and commerce in which sector? Agriculture sector. This is the reason. This is the reason. Why? Because whether it is India or USA or Canada or any country, they know that their agriculture sector is vulnerable. Why? Agriculture is based on climate thing also. So even in the best of best technical equipments, fertilizers, technology you have, but you cannot fight with the weather after a certain extent. So because of the vulnerability of agriculture sector from what? Externalities. Externalities like weather and climate related things. So this is why agriculture sector is vulnerable. And in order to protect agriculture sector, every country deploy what? Protectionist measure. India points out USA's protectionist measures. USA always point out one. India's protectionist measure. You are protectionist. You are trying to protect your sector. And you are not facilitating the trade in what? Agriculture sector. So agriculture sector is still not a solved issue in the context of global trade. And that is why you will not see what? Agriculture in the context of what? Global trade scenario. Even if you read the economic survey word by word, you will not find too much discussion on what? Agriculture at what level? Global level. Understood? Now, go for industries and services sector. So as I was saying about Europe, so Europe have 2 trends. What trend? Certain economies, fine, which are known for their focus on what? Services sector. Whereas certain economies like Germany, Austria, so these countries are known for what? Their industries and production and manufacturing. So major economies of Europe like Germany, France, Austria, all these economies which are known for their what? Manufacturing. They are seeing declining trend. There is what? Declining trend. And declining trend because of many reasons. Demand is shrinking in the Europe, plus there is a disruption in the global supply chain. So these are the 2 issues why manufacturing in Europe as well as around the world facing an issue. fall in the demand plus supply chain disruption. Fine. Whereas other economies in Europe, which are basically based on what? Services. Fine. They are doing fairly well. Their service sector is on rise and they are looking forward. For example, Spain, Portugal, even UK, they are able to do fairly well in the services sector. But those economies which are largely dependent on what? Manufacturing. They are facing this issue. And Europe also have another unique problem as per the survey. And they have mentioned it. Europe is also facing geopolitical issues and domestic issues also. If you are reading the newspaper, you will find that there are issues in France and Germany. Fine. So France and Germany, both economies are facing internal political issues. Other thing, Europe is closely involved in Russia-Ukraine war. Fine. So because of Russia-Ukraine war, Europe is purchasing energy product at higher price. Earlier, they are purchasing energy product at lower price directly from where? Russia. Now they are purchasing same Russian energy product from other countries like India at higher price. Imagine something you are purchasing earlier at 100 rupees. Now the same thing you are purchasing at 400 rupees from other country. Because of your what? Your political commitments towards whom? Ukraine. So because of this geopolitical issue, supply chain disruption and crisis in the demand side, Europe is overall facing global headwind. So the concept of headwind is used when the jet or aeroplane is moving in the direction where the wind is blowing. So if wind is blowing in this way and plane is also moving, then this wind is going to put a pressure on what? Plane. So this phenomena is known as what? Headwind. And if you are moving in this way, like air is moving in this way and plane is also moving, then it is called what? Tailwind. So tailwind is a favorable condition in the economy and headwind is what? Opposite condition in the economy. So this is about Europe. Now they have discussed in detail about what? US. Fine. So US, after COVID, they have provided a stimulus. And because it is a US, so US will provide a stimulus in which country? Means dollar. So when US started providing dollar, the supply of dollar is increased. Supply of dollar is what? Increased. Means, consider for a moment, not RBI, Federal Reserve of US in your mind. Okay? Consider that we are discussing about what? We are discussing not in the India, in the context of US Federal Reserve. So US Federal Reserve, after COVID, they decrease what? They decrease interest rates. They decrease their interest rates. Fine. Because of the decrease in the interest rate, supply of dollar is what? Increased. So supply of dollar is increased and bond yield will rise or fall. If interest rate is decreasing, if US Federal Reserve have decreased the interest rate, bond yield on US Treasury bonds will increase or decrease? If increase, raise your hand. Because you are doing his, I am not able to understand that his. Increase, decrease. What? If there is a decrease in the interest rate by US Federal Reserve, then what will be the impact on bond yield of US Treasury bonds? What is bond yield? You purchased a bond and you are hoping some interest earning, and that hope of interest earning is called what? Bond yield. Fine. So my question is, if there is a decrease in the interest rate by US Federal Reserve, but question is what interest rate is decreased? US Federal Reserve, the central bank of US, And Central Bank of US has decreased the interest rate on which it is providing money to all financial institutions like bank. So US, like in India, RBI provide loans to bank and they charge interest rate. So if RBI is going to decrease the interest rates, bank can get the money at lower interest rate? Yes or no? Yes. So again the same question in the Indian context also. If RBI is going to decrease the interest rate, bond yield will increase or decrease?
Decrease.
Bond yield of Indian government securities will increase. Raise your hand. Increase. Decrease. Rest of the people, they are waiting. They are waiting. You have to explain. Fine. Acha. What is the relation between interest rate and bond yield? Bond yield and interest rates are what? Inversely proportional or directly proportional? Bond price and bond yield are what? Inversely proportional. Fine. Whereas bond yield and interest rates are directly proportional. आप लोग भूल जाते हो बहुत जल्दी. Try to have Chyawanprash and Sangpushpi in your diet to increase your memory power. Fine. And also eat what? Healthy food. Mushroom. Not mushroom, healthy food. Anyways, bond yield and bond price, they are what? Inversely proportional. Whereas interest rates and bond yield are what? Directly proportional. So if there is a decrease in what? Interest rate, then their bond yield is also going to be what? Decrease. Fine. Bond yield is also going to what? Decrease. So bond yield was decreased in US. Fine. Why? US Federal Reserve have started giving loan to the banks at lower interest rate. So bond yield decreased in where? US. So those who are investing in US, they left the US and they came to where? India. But when 2023 onwards, inflation start rising at where? US. So US Federal Reserve, which has decreased the interest rates, it started increasing what? Interest rates. And when they started increasing the interest rate, then investment in US Treasury bonds become more profitable than investing at where? India. And that is why the investments which are coming to India, they started flowing away from where? India, and that phenomena known as capital flight. So India started facing a crisis of what? Capital flights. So capital flight started. Fine. Capital flight started. And at the same time, US government was about to face the election. In 2024, election happened, and Donald Trump was very clear, if I will come, then I will make your life very good. This is what he promised for whom? US. And he promised to make America great again. And under that, what he said that? Now see his logic. He said that we are the largest consumer country in the world. And we consume a lot. And those countries who are sending their goods to us, the same question for you also. Imagine that India is the largest consumer country of the world. Fine. And India is allowing other countries' goods at lower tariff. But other countries are what? Other countries are putting higher tariff on what? India made goods. Then what your Prime Minister will say? Make India great again. So Donald Trump is nothing doing wrong. For his country, he is doing a great job. But because US economy is closely linked with what? World economy. So if US is going to be mean, it is going to be problematic for other countries. Fine. It is going to be problematic for other countries. So this is what happening. After election of Trump, they have decided to increase what? Tariff. Now this tariff war, initially it is targeted towards where? US, Mexico, Canada, fine, and China. Next, European Union, and after that, India. Modi ji has already decided to meet whom? Donald Trump. Before he is going to do something, I'll meet him and we will decide. Even in the budget, government has given indication. In this year's budget, government has given the indication that we are going to decrease what? Custom duty. Now you can link the talk between Prime Minister and Donald Trump before the budget. It was earlier not related to budget. Trump said that the Prime Minister is about to visit. He is planned to visit at where? He is planned to visit at US. Fine, in the February. This is what statement made by him officially. Now you can relate that conversation and the budget. Government has decreased what? Custom duty, and at the same time government is saying Atmanirbhar Bharat. Fine, developed country by 2047 and make in India kind of the initiative. But at the same time you are decreasing what? Tariff. On what? The goods which are coming from where? Outside. So, see, you cannot have each and everything according to you. You have to make adjustments. Fine. So, in order to make India in the better position to negotiate with whom? US, such kind of initiatives were taken by the government of India. So, US is having certain issues, and that issues are creating issue on whom? Indian economy. So, there is a hard bargain between whom? India and US, which is ongoing. And many things will be clear once the Prime Minister is going to visit US. Probably on 11th to 13th of February. This is tentative date as per reported by the newspaper. He is going to visit. So the more clarity will come. And this time Prime Minister's visit is also going to impact rupees exchange rate value against whom? Dollar. Understood? So this is what happening at global level. So in nutshell, two major issues at the global economy. One is at one side, there is a supply chain disruption. At second point, demand is not rising, especially in manufacturing sector. Services sector is performing fairly well, but manufacturing sector is having lot of issues. So demand is still very low in what? Manufacturing sector. Supply chain disruption is there. Plus, there is one saying, ek to karela upar se neem chada. Fine. So, these are the problems we have. But apart from these problems, the geopolitical issues. Fine. So, geopolitical issues. Russia-Ukraine war is there. Though Hamas and Israel have said that they have almost what? They have almost solved their problem and they are exchanging those prisoners and they are also releasing those and they are going to have proper peace agreement. But still it is very fragile. Fine. Second thing, third thing in this context, geopolitical crisis. Third thing is Iran. Fine. Iran. So Iran still can be another issue. Fine, because Iran is consistently increasing its military strength against whom? US. Fine. So still geopolitical situation is not very calm in order to encourage what? World economy. So how this world economy is analyzed? In order to analyze world economy, they use this indicator, PMI. What is it? PMI? Purchase Manager Index. PMI index. So PMI index is used for the purpose of what? For the purpose of evaluating what is happening in the economy at present. Fine. So this indicator is used in the economic survey in order to what? In order to get this analysis which I have presented just to you. The analysis which I have presented about the economy, that is largely based on what? PMI data. So what is PMI? How it works? Write it down. Give a heading. Purchase manager index, purchase manager index, right, is an economic indicator, derived from monthly survey, of private sector companies. It aims to provide information about current and future business conditions. So that company can make right decisions. It also helps investors to take right decisions. This PMI is compiled by various organizations around the world. For example, Institute for Supply Management. Prepares PMI in US. Whereas in India, it is prepared by IHS Market. IHS Market. The PMI score, in the next line, right? PMI score is presented as an index. With score ranging from 0 to 100. Now this is important. Fine. Up to 50, right? Up to 50, it is shrinking. Whereas above 50, it is expanding. So there is a statement in the economic survey, and statement said that despite there is fall in the manufacturing in India, still India's PMI is above 50. Despite there is a fall in the manufacturing, still India's PMI in the manufacturing is above what? 50. So what this statement says that if you know the PMI and the score, then it is easy for you. But if you do not know the meaning of the PMI and its score, it is going to be very difficult for you to understand. So in this way, understanding of. See, sometimes what happens? Students read the economic survey and they feel that I got the understanding. But until unless you do not know these small terms and their meaning in that way, even you know that PMI, Purchasing Manager Index. So what PMI do? PMI is maintained by private organizations. And what they do? They go to company and they get the survey. How much inventory you have of the product. Suppose that there is a company who manufacture a camera. Okay, Sony. So they are manufacturing a camera. How much camera are there in warehouse? How much order do you have? How much book of order you have? How much you have in your warehouse? How much you are manufacturing? Fine. At present, how many number you are manufacturing? How much you have in your warehouse and how much order you have? So they collect this data. Fine. So if you will see, this is one of the independent data which provide a true picture of actually what is happening in the economy. Because most of the time, government and government institutions, they are either underscoring or exaggerating the situation. If problem is bigger, then government is going to show it is not as big as. And if government is performing well, then they are going to exaggerate their performance. This is why if you will see, whenever there is a PMI is released, all leading newspaper are going to publish PMI data. Fine. If you are reading newspaper when you have started your preparation last year in May, June, considering May and June, since then every month at least 2 times PMI was in the Hindu. At least 2 times. But have you ever tried to find out what is PMI? No. Even it is not part of the classes. But the day UPSC Civil Services Prelims exam is going to write, consider the following statement about PMI. Fine. The day they are going to mention and everybody is going to what? Woke up. After getting failed there. Fine. So many things you can do on your own. Fine. So PMI, if it is 50 above, then it is a positive signature. And if it is less than 50, it is a problematic situation. So economic survey says that there is a decline in the manufacturing in India. But still we are able to maintain what? Still we are able to maintain 50 above PMI. And this 50 above PMI shows a positive sign in what? Positive sign in the manufacturing. It means this manufacturing problem is not a permanent or structural problem. This decline in the manufacturing or decline in the GDP is not a structural issue. It is an issue because of certain factors which are working at short-term level. But in the long run, Indian economy, manufacturing sector is on the right path, having consolidated year by year growth. So this is one small statement. Manufacturing sector is on decline, but still we have resilient PMI over 3 to 4 years. So this is one line, but see this line, how line is translating into showing the problem what our economy is facing is a situational problem, not a structural problem, and we have to work hard in order to resolve this issue. But it is a short-term problem. Fine, but it is above 50, but not near to 100. It is 50 to 60, and we need to make it at where? 70 to 80 at least. And for that purpose, Finance Minister said that there are 4 engines of growth. First engine, agriculture. Second engine, MSME sector. So you can see that the government realized that in order to push the manufacturing in India, we should not just focus on what? Big industries, large industries. We have to focus on what? MSME sector. So this time, in fact, if I will analyze the budget at personal level by doing political and economic analysis both, so I found that this is one of the finest budget India have in last 15 years. Because of what? Because the focus on which sector? MSME. Though government have not put too much money, but at least government have realized how important this sector is. Why? Not just to increase what? GDP. Because this government have found that in last 10 years, they have focused on what? GDP, and they have focused on what? Large industries. But large industries have pushed the GDP, but not what? Employment. It is relatively small industries, they can trigger employment-led GDP. So focus on MSME sector is for what purpose? Focus on MSME sector is for the purpose of pushing the GDP through push what? Employment. So when you will write an answer or you are going to analyze, you have to analyze in this way. The great push for the MSME sector is not going to just increase our income, but it is also going to increase employability. Because bigger sector have greater capability of what? Automation. And that is why they will increase the income very much, but they will increase the employment very less. But if you are going to focus on MSME sector, so MSME sector have a great potential of what? Increasing what? Employment generated growth. Fine, the term is employment generated growth. So employment is going to generate what? Growth. Growth is not going to generate the employment. It is employment which is going to generate what? Growth. The largest sector, they do what? They generate the growth, but they are not able to generate what? Employment. And that is why they are not able to go what? 400 ke par. Fine. So 400 cross, they have thought that they have not crossed. Then they realize the situation. The great middle class in India is rising, but their aspiration is not fulfilled. So that is why government has bowed down towards whom? The middle class. Fine. So middle class, they have given the tax relief in the income tax, but this middle class is very associated with which sector? MSME sector. Fine. So what government did years back, 1991, what they did? They have went for LPG reforms. They went for what? LPG reforms. And this budget is just a foundation for what? LPG 2.0. Why? Because in the first round, they have decreased certain regulations. But if you will see this year's budget, focusing on MSME sector, government also said that we are going to initiate what? Regulatory reforms. Again, push what sector? MSME sector and economy. Understood? So in this way, they want to give a great push. Have you understood the PMI? Fine. Now write a question. Write a question. Consider the following statement about PMI. Write it a little bit fast, okay? Consider the following statement about PMI. PMI is an economic indicator. Statement number 1. PMI is an economic indicator that measures performance of manufacturing sector and services sector. Manufacturing sector and services sector based on surveys conducted among purchase manager. Surveys conducted among purchase manager. Statement number 2. A PMI above 50. A PMI above 50 indicates economic expansion. whereas below 50 signals contraction. Third statement. In 2024, India's PMI for the manufacturing sector was consistently remain below 50. Reflecting slowdown in the industries. All three statements are correct. Only two correct. Only one correct. Or none of the correct. Only which one is correct? First statement is correct. First statement is correct or incorrect? First statement is correct or incorrect? PMI stand for Purchasing Manager Index. And it is for which sector? I know that you are going to do this mistake, and that is why deliberately I now told you it is also for what sector? Services sector. Otherwise, my question is going to be what? No meaning. Why? Because statement number 2 and statement number 3, you can get it easily because I already explained it. I just want to give you the scenario. If you have a limited information, how it is going to impact your ability to correct the question or get negative? Fine. With the information which I have given you, if you will attempt this question, you are going to say that only one statement is correct. Because you have a perception that Purchasing Manager Index is used for only which sector? Manufacturing sector. Why? I have explained this Purchasing Manager Index in the context of what? Manufacturing. But have I said that it is not used for the services sector? No. I have not said that. You perceived. So this is why the limited information, not complete information, is always dangerous. And that is why I deliberately put the second and third statement very easy. Because you are not going to have any suspicion in the mind. Statement number 1, Purchasing Manager Index for manufacturing sector, Jai Mata Di. Second, 50 above, 50 low, abhi to explain kiya tha, just he explained. Again, Jai Mata Di. Fine, this is correct. Third, it is incorrect. Why? I have explained it. So that is why only one statement is correct, but 2 statements are correct. So keep this thing in the mind. This PMI is used not only for any particular sector. It can be used for any sector. It is purchasing manager. So even in the agriculture sector or associate sector, Purchasing Manager Index can be used, but highly unlikely in the context of India. Why? In India, agriculture activity is highly unorganized. So the PMI data of agriculture sector is not going to work in the Indian context because sample size is going to be what? Very small. Why? Agriculture sector is a very unorganized sector and do not have pan-India same kind of the market. Every state have their own APMCs and their way of doing what? Agriculture business. Whereas manufacturing and services sector, they work at what? National level. So for these 2 sectors, this Purchasing Manager Index can work in the very well manner. So this PMI is used for both sectors. Again, if you have read that PMI in the newspaper, now it is easy for you to get it. Why? Because they are giving the data of both sectors. Not only manufacturing, but also what? Services sector. So how many statements are correct? First and second is correct. Understood? Now, right, next point. One more indicator they have used to analyze this state of economy. The second indicator here they have used is Global Supply Chain Pressure Index. Global Supply Chain Pressure Index. GSCPI, Global Supply Chain Pressure Index. GSCPI is an economic indicator developed by Federal Reserve. To measure level of stress and disruption. In global supply chain. To create an index, shipping cost, comma, inventory level, and manufacturing delivery time is used. Then an index is created. To understand impact of supply chain related issue on policy formulation, economic forecasting, and inflation analysis. See what they do. Global supply chain pressure index. So global supply chain. So products are being manufactured in a different part of the world. Fine. So as I have given you the example, a ship which is supposed to collect the material from Chinese city and come back to where? India. Fine. So the time taken by that ship to reach China only 7 to 10 days. But returning from there, it took how much? 3 months. Minimum 3 months means minimum 4 months is required. So delivery time is low or very high? Very high. So this is going to disrupt the supply chain or not? It is going to create a lot of issues for the supply chain. Suppose that a firm want to create a large setup for their online classes, and they need camera and smart boards, and they have given the date that we are going to establish 100 classrooms around the India. They have announced, but when they got this message from the company, the supplier company who is supplying what? Smart board and cameras, they said that, sorry sir, before 4 months it is not possible. And you have put all those things accordingly. You have made your plans and schedules. I am going to start this by this date. I will take the admission. By this, I will do this. So your business is going to be severely impacted or not? Because your entire business is going to be delayed by what? 4 months. Just because of what? Delay in shipping. Fine. So this is why delay in the shipping. Acha. Then what happened? Those ships which are moving from where? Those who are moving from Iran and Yemen area. In that area, consistently, Houthi rebels are targeting what? Shipments. All the ships. And they, later on, they said that we will target only on Israeli bound ship. But before that, they are targeting what? Every ship. So the shipping cost and the shipping insurance have increased 400 times. Suppose that you have to pay shipping insurance $100. Now you have to pay how much? $400. So if the shipping charges are going to what? Increase, delivery time is going to increase, what will be the impact on inflation? Inflation is going to decrease or increase? Increase. And accordingly, you have to make certain policy decisions. See what India is doing and see countries like US is doing. So US is not just dependent on demand and supply in the economy. They are also looking at how this supply chain is getting disrupted and how the supply chain is going to create a bigger problem on what? Factors like inflation. And if we are collecting the data, then it will be easy for us to manage the inflation in a better manner. Fine. So this is why this indexation is very important. So this index was in news after COVID when the supply chain disruption came into the picture. It was in existence even before that. It was in the existence even before that. But nobody have paid attention to it. When the COVID came, supply chain disruption came, and US data has provided an exact prediction. Then people mesmerized, oh, this data can be used by us also. Then they started following what? US Federal Reserve's data. Earlier, nobody was focusing on that. So this is why sometimes indexations, they are very important. And it was not in news. Since the supply chain disruption is creating problem for India also. And in the bigger manner. Then India has started following this one. And this year, it has got the mention in what? Economic survey. So possibility of question having there. Maybe they will not create a complete question on this, but they can use in what? Statement term. Understood? Write it down. Write a question on it. An answer. Consider the following statement on GSCPI. Consider the following statement on GSCPI. First statement, it is developed by the Reserve Bank of India. It is developed by Reserve Bank of India. Just a fun. Right. Actually, I have to give the question first, then I have to explain. I made a mistake. Second statement. This one is interesting. GSCPI value above zero indicates below average supply chain pressure. Indicates below average supply chain pressure. Whereas what you have written, below or above? Below. Statement is GSCPI value below or above? Above zero. Okay. Right further. Whereas value below zero. Whereas value below zero indicates above average pressure. Above average pressure. In financial year 2024-25, third statement, in financial year 2024-25, GSCPI was consistently remain above zero. Answer. Answer. All three are correct? Only two is correct? Only one is correct. Which one is correct? First statement is correct or incorrect? First statement is incorrect because it is made by whom? Federal Reserve. Now second statement. Wrong. Why it is wrong? Because I predicted. Right. Answer. First statement is incorrect. Second statement is also incorrect. Second statement is incorrect because value of 0 indicates average supply chain pressure. 0 value indicates average supply chain pressure, whereas above 0 value means above average pressure. And below 0 value indicates below average pressure. So if the indicator value is what? If the indicator's value is below 0, it is good or bad? If the indicator's value is below 0, below average value of GSCPI is good or bad? I understand you are taking class since morning, but you have to understand I am also taking the class and you know me very well. So answer my question, I'll wind up. Otherwise, be ready. Think and answer. They are saying, what is it? It is showing the pressure on what? It is showing pressure on supply chain. So if the more pressure on the supply chain is there, supply chain will be resilient or facing problem? Facing problem. If supply chain will face problem, what will the impact on inflation? Inflation will high. So it is good for the economy or bad for the economy? Bad for the economy. Fine. So if the value is above 0, it is not good for the economy. And if the value is below 0, it is good for the economy. You can write in this word also, otherwise you will get confused. Below 0 is a good indicator for the economy and above 0 is not good for the economy. Okay, for third statement, actually what happens? Third statement, if you'll see the economic survey. So economic survey consistently highlighting the issue of what? Consistently highlighting the issue of supply chain disruption. They are consistently highlighting the supply chain disruption for entire what? Entire economic survey. Because they want to defend themselves now. Economic survey released by whom? Government. Economy is shrinking. So they are putting the blame on whom? Global supply chain crisis, global supply chain crisis. But this data, which is compiled by whom? Federal Reserve. So this compilation of the data by the Federal Reserve shows that on an average for entire 2024, on an average for entire 2024, value was in negative. Average value was in what? Negative. So average value was in negative for entire year. Average. Entire year's average shows that the value is what? Negative. It means that what? Supply chain disruption pressure is not as government of India is trying to portray. They have not mentioned this thing. They have just mentioned what? GSCPI they have mentioned. Global Supply Chain Pressure Index. They have mentioned this thing only. They have not went to the detail. But they went to detail what? Supply chain crisis, supply chain crisis, supply chain crisis, supply chain crisis. Because of the what? Supply chain crisis, Indian economy is not performing well. But when you will dig deep inside and you will find that how it is functioning and how it is going on, then you will find this data, then you can question to the government of India. You cannot, right? But if you will find that data, you will find that there is a contradiction. What government is saying that? Government is saying that because of supply chain disruption, we are facing this issue. But data is showing something else. Data is showing that this indicator on an average for entire 2024, it was in negative, though in some instance it become positive. When there is a height of what? Tension between Israel and Iran. And Houthis, they have started targeting. And see the contradiction. At this moment, government of India is saying that the supply chain disruption, Houthis rebels are doing this. But it is Indian Navy who perform best in the world in order to save those containers, ships. And any of the ship was not targeted. Any of the India shipment was not targeted by the Houthis. Mostly they have targeted those shipments which are outbound from India to where? Israel. If they found that it is going to Israel, they have targeted it. But any incoming shipment was not targeted by Houthis. Why? They are backed by whom? Iran. And India and Iran are having good reputation with each other. So government is saying something, supply chain disruption. But this indicator is showing that it is for entire year it is what? Negative. Fine. So you have to keep this thing in the mind. Okay? Right, next. Just one more question. Achha, just one rather than question, one concept which is, see, I told you three things. At global level, at union level and state level. At union level, government already have mentioned that because of supply chain disruption and inflationary pressure, economy is not able to perform well. Because of this disruption, because of this supply chain disruption and inflationary pressure, Indian economy is not able to perform well. And we are expecting to have a GDP growth rate of 6.4%. And at the same time, IMF have predicted the global economy is going to be somewhere around 3.3%. So IMF predicts that the global economy is going to rise by what? 3.3%. Government of India is optimistic to have a growth rate of how much? 6.4. And if government of India is saying that 6.4, then RBI is going to say 6.1. IMF is going to say that 5.8. World Bank is going to say that 5.9. So these are some predictions about India's economy. Fine, Indian economy. So in the first chapter, they have not dealt with in detail about the Indian economy because rest of the chapter based on only on what? Indian economy. Okay, listen again. First chapter tells about three things: global, Indian and state. So first chapter, they have given a good detail of the world economy. And they have given some prediction about what? Indian economy, and they said that we are going to deal all the issues of Indian economy in subsequent chapter. From chapter number 2 to chapter number 30. They have mentioned this. Then they have mentioned few data of what? Few data of states. And they also admitted one thing. What they admitted? They have admitted that in this year's survey, we are not going to discuss states' economy in detail as we have did in the previous surveys. Why? Why? Because the previous survey was released few months back only. Election year tha na? So last year was election year. So after the election, this economic survey was released in July. Fine. So within 7-8 months, you have did what? You have did for another survey. And because of the short span of time, you are not able to collect all the relevant data. And that is why state's economy you have not dealt in the detail. But in the opening chapter, they have given few analysis. And good news for Telangana is what? Good news for Telangana is that they have not got any good allocation from the budget. But Telangana is the best performing state to manage their tax resources on their own. Almost 86% of the tax revenue is coming from where? Telangana state on its own. Fine. So in that context, Telangana is performing best and Punjab is performing worst. So basically for states, See, if you are not going to focus, then be ready for 8:30. Fine? Or focus. I'll wind up in 5 minutes. Fine? We'll continue from tomorrow. And those people who are seriously interested and they want to write the exam this year or even next year, I know many of you, even who are watching online also, many of you do not know the basic things. My objective is what? Through this economic survey and budget class, those who have did in the class, they can get a quick revision. Those who do not understand the things, they will understand the severity of the topic. Like in the class, there are the many people who do not know that bond yield and bond price. And they can understand how crucial it is for to understanding. So this is also a learning lesson for you. Fine. I'll promise you, I'll not extend beyond 1.5 hours. I'll wind it up. But you also have to promise me that for that 1.5 hours, you are going to be extremely concentrated and focused. Question, concept, understanding, that's my promise. You have to give your 100%, that is your promise. Fine. So, be mentally prepared for the session. I will take as many sessions you want, but I will make sure that in the budget and economics survey, you should understand each and every fine line which is mentioned there. It is not going to create any problem. And if you will do this way, then even those people who are not going to appear this year, when they appear next or next to next year, they will find that this session is going to be extremely productive and helpful in order to understand the things later on. Okay, so just focus for next few minutes. I'll wind it up. Fine. From tomorrow, strictly 1.5 hours. I understand that you are having a lot of classes. Don't worry. So, what I was mentioning, in that section, they have mentioned few good things about the state and some bad things about the state. There are states, see, basically states have 3 resources for their expenditure. One, their own revenue sources. Their own revenue resources. Second, what they are getting from where? Central pool. Third, borrowings. Fine. So, if a state is very resilient and it is good in what? It is good in their own resources, then they have more fiscal independence with respect to what? Government of India. Government of India is giving aid or not. I don't care because I have my own resources. Fine. This is. And if you do not have your own resources, your dependency will on central government is going to what? Increase. Number 2. Now what I am going to discuss is very important. Despite state of Telangana have good amount of the best performance in terms of their own resources, but when it is about capex, they are not performing properly even. Their more expenditure is going on what? Revenue expenditure. Fine. More and more expenditure going on what? Revenue expenditure. That is not a good sign. Because if you are going to do same, then your sources of income is going to what? Decrease in upcoming years. Then you will face the problem what Punjab is facing, West Bengal is facing right now. Whereas state like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they are getting good amount of central assistance because they are big state, population factors work, but they spend more and more money, especially Uttar Pradesh, spending more and more money on what? Capex. So despite below par performance on their own revenue sources, state of Uttar Pradesh is having a better capacity to perform in the future because they are spending on what? Capital expenditure. And the most disturbing trend is what? Most disturbing trend is that overall, all the states in India, their capital expenditure is overall. All the states' capital expenditure is shrinking and expenditure on revenue, especially on subsidies and freebies, is what? Increasing. And that is not a right trend to follow. This is recommended by the government of India. In fact, in December, State of Economic Survey was released by the RBI. RBI also have indicated this thing. What Indian states are doing? Indian states are not focusing on capital expenditure. They are focusing on what? Revenue expenditure. The culture of freebies. And that is going to be dangerous trend for what? Dangerous trend for the economy. So RBI also said that overall states have improved their economic financial health. But the problem is that despite their financial health is improving, they are not spending sufficient money on what? Capex. Okay. Acha. Today's session PDF, I will send it to you on the YouTube channel. Also, it will be available once the session will be uploaded. On the YouTube channel will be uploaded, and PDF I will also provide you by the tonight or tomorrow morning. You will get the PDF. I will not give the PDF in advance. Fine, better, because I have not classified question and answer separately. Topic, question, answer. Topic, question, answer. So in this way, I am preparing the PDF for the daily lectures. So lecture number 1 PDF you will get tomorrow. Fine. Thank you.